The night sky over New Mexico was unusually silent. Wind-whipped dust devils dotted the barren landscape, and the distant hum of long-range scanners echoed faintly across the scrubland. In the sleepy communities that clustered around White Sands, locals drifted to bed unaware that history was about to shatter their world. At precisely 0:03 UTC on July 19, 2025, three colossal silhouettes materialized above the desert's leak, obsidian triangles breaching the atmosphere like dark harbingers. Each vessel was nearly a kilometer wide, its edges glowing with an eerie cobalt light that pulsed in rhythmic cadence, as if breathing. The ambient hum of their electromagnetic drive resonated through the ground, rattling windows and raising goose flesh on every exposed armed dot in Washington, D.C. The National Space Defense Center's command room erupted into frantic activity. Scanners tracked the objects descending at incredible speed and with absolute precision. On the giant holographic display, the triangular shapes hovered over the Trinity site, where the first atomic bomb test had forever altered humanity's perception of power. It was both poetic and ominous. Dr. Elena Marquez, Director of Interplanetary Affairs, watched the readouts with tense curiosity. Her breath caught as the transponder codes decoded into a single, unmistakable symbol, the 12-pointed star encompassed by an Ouroboros of white luminescence, the seal of the Galactic Council. She turned to General Isaac Malone, his face grim beneath the sterile glow of the control console. "They've arrived," she whispered. Moments later, the vessels remained motionless in the sky, their silent vigil a testament to otherworldly superiority. All across Earth, satellites and observatories locked onto the intruders. News outlets fractured into rolling wall-to-wall coverage, broadcasting live footage of the looming behemoths. Families huddled around glowing screens, children clutched teddy bears, and conspiracists argued ceaselessly on social media. Yet no one could deny the reality staring back at them. Humanity was no longer alone, nor unthreatened. President Amina Desai had been woken 2 hours before by the urgent chime of her secure line. Within minutes, she was escorted into the Situation Room beneath the White House, flanked by her National Security Advisor, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and a hastily convened panel of scientists. The normally unflappable leader paced before the long table, her brow furrowed in worry. "Readouts confirm they're not targeting militaries," reported Admiral Jane Harlow, Director of the United States Space Command. "Their arrival pattern suggests a diplomatic opening, yet their size and configuration imply they intend to dominate." "Diplomatic or coercive?" President Desai asked, voice taut. "Possibly both," General Malone replied, voice echoing in the bunker's steel walls. "This is the Galactic Council. They speak through power." On screen, the tallest of the three triangles projected a stream of fractal light and alien script that twisted like living calligraphy. Every time the glyphs shifted, the humming vessels synchronized, sending waves of electromagnetic interference flickering across the room's instruments. Suddenly, the lights in the Situation Room dimmed, the holographic displays blurring. Every camera, phone, and screen on Earth cut over to the same feed. The supreme envoy of the Council, Tarvikas, standing in a chamber of shifting starfields, his insectal silhouette backlit by the shimmer of countless galaxies. In that chilling moment, 8 billion souls collectively held their breath. "People of Earth," intoned Tar-S voice, flawless in English, but resonating with an alien timbre. "Your species' unchecked expansion into the border sectors constitutes a flagrant violation of the Sovereign Codex. You have 72 standard hours to withdraw all interplanetary assets and cease all extraterritorial development. Failure to comply will result in the Council's collective reprisal." His final words hung in the air like a death sentence. Newscasters paused mid-sentence. Diplomats froze in mid-gesture, and in homes around the globe, fingers trembling over remote controls. After a beat of stunned silence, an uproar of speculation and fear replaced calm reasoning. In London, Prime Minister Salim Khan convened an emergency cabinet meeting. In Beijing, Premier Li Xiaoling held crisis talks with military chiefs. In Moscow, President Ivan Petrov ordered armed forces to high readiness. Yet for the first time in modern history, nations set aside centuries of mistrust. Within hours, the United Nations Security Council was united in a single resolution to confront the Council's ultimatum. Back in the Situation Room, President Desai watched the draft resolution scroll across her personal screen. Every major power had signed on: America, China, Russia, India, the European Union, even Bolivia and Senegal. The resolution condemned the Council's intrusion as an existential threat to humanity's sovereignty and demanded clarification. But more importantly, it called for a unified global response. She tapped a command on her console. A secure channel to the world's militaries opened. Active defenses are to be prepared, she ordered, but we don't fire unless fired upon. We'll approach this as a diplomatic crisis first. Her advisor leaned in. Madam President, preliminary scans show their shields can tolerate our most advanced yields. We don't have the firepower to break them. Desai nodded slowly. Understood. Then we negotiate time. We need every hour. Meanwhile, on the ground in New Mexico, local first responders evacuated nearby towns as a precaution. Field medics and military police set up perimeter checkpoints, and a no-fly zone was declared within a 500-kilometer radius of the landing sites. Journalists in armored vehicles craned their lenses toward the monolithic vessels. Alien scholars and conspiracy theorists whispered about prophecies fulfilled. Skeptics demanded proof of life beyond the ship's exteriors. Inside one of the Council's great triangles, a portal shimmered open. A delegation of humans selected for their scientific expertise and diplomatic acumen stepped through under armed guard. Among them was Dr. Marquez, chosen for her mastery of xenolinguistics. She emerged into a vast hall carved from a single, iridescent crystal. The walls pulsed with living data streams. The air smelled faintly of ozone and cold metal. At the far end of the hall, Tarvikas waited. His four-limbed form was draped in ceremonial robes, their weave alive with cosmic patterns. His bulbous eyes reflected centuries of cosmic conquest. With a gesture, the floor-level days rose, bringing Marquez and her colleagues face to face with the envoy. Let us speak plainly, human. Tar's voice echoed. Your world teeters on the brink of galactic law. You have one chance to comply. Marquez swallowed, her voice steady as she replied. We understand your concerns, envoy. But Earth also has rights recognized by the Codex. We must discuss terms. Tar's mandibles clicked in a sound that might have been laughter. Terms? You only have 72 hours. Then the Council's will becomes decree. As she was escorted back to the shuttle, Marquez risked one glance at the cavernous hall. Data streams scrolled past like rivers of light, recounting the Council's history of enforcement. Entire planets razed, civilizations dismantled. Her heart pounded. Humanity's fate now hinged on negotiations with powers beyond reckoning. Moments later, Marquez's shuttle rocketed back through the portal. She materialized beneath the New Mexican stars, her mind racing with the weight of Tar's words. The sands beyond the landing pad stretched empty and silent. The vessels above shimmered once, twice, and then stood immovable, as if daring Earth to make its choice. At the United Nations, cameras captured Marquez's solemn arrival. President Desai stood to receive her, expression unreadable. Every leader in the assembly leaned forward, waiting for the report that would shape humanity's response. Dr. Elena Marquez took a steadying breath. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, voice ringing through the hall. The Council's envoy made it clear. We face a revision of the Sovereign Codex or oblivion. They gave us 72 hours. They intend to see whether we are worthy of coexistence or deserving of annihilation. Silence settled over the chamber like a shroud. Outside, the full weight of the ultimatum pressed down on every human soul. The clock had begun its merciless countdown, and Earth's answer would echo across the galaxy.
Beneath the relentless glare of the desert sun and the droning roar of heavy machinery, humanity's first true warships began to take shape. From Shanghai's sprawling shipyards to the steel-forging foundries of Dusseldorf, from the retrofitted Antonov hangars outside Kyiv to the clandestine underground complexes beneath Johannesburg, engineers and technicians labored without pause. Every rivet driven, every circuit welded, Every module assembled carried the weight of Earth's collective hope and dread. 1. The birth of the IFC high above the planet. The International Fleet Command, IFC, coalesced from remnants of programs once thought obsolete. In a hollowed section of the decommissioned International Space Station, now renamed ISS Battle Station Artemis, multinational crews worked around the clock. Admiral Leo Nakamura stood on a grated catwalk overlooking the main docking bay. The bulkheads below gleamed with fresh coats of anti-radiation paint. Support trusses shuddered under the weight of newly installed railgun turrets. Beside him, Commander He Taojin of China tapped at a holodisplay, overlaying firing arcs against projected orbital trajectories. We'll need an extra 10% power to the coil arrays if we're to pierce their primary shields, He Tao warned, voice clipped with urgency. Nakamura nodded. Allocated. We'll have engineers calibrate the new superconductor loops tonight. I want live fire tests before to 60 hours. Around them, a cacophony of languages: English, Mandarin, Hindi, Russian, Arabic, Spanish drifted through the vaulted bay. Engineers from 5 continents scrambled to translate alien engineering data captured during the reconnaissance probe that had skimmed one of the Council's scout drones. The IFC was no longer a vestige of peaceful exploration. It had become humanity's spear. 2. The Prometheus-class destroyers on the riverbanks of the Yangtze. In Hangzhou's retrofitted dry docks, Prometheus-class destroyers took shape. These sleek 450-meter vessels combined Earth's best military hardware with salvaged deep space research modules. Amelia Reyes, the destroyer's lead engineer, leaned over a half-assembled engine manifold. Sparks flew as she welded a nanofiber-reinforced exhaust port. Sweat beaded on her brow, not solely from heat, but from the enormity of the task. Each Prometheus would carry magnetoplasma railguns capable of throwing tungsten slugs at 0.6 C antimatter torpedo tubes, prototypes born from CERN spillover. Research quantum graviton mines, designed to disrupt small-scale spacetime around incoming fighters. EO-12 calibrations are done, called out Lieutenant Sun Jai from the control console. Testing a plasma containment now. Amelia straightened, voice steady. Good. Run the full diagnostics. We launch in 48 hours. No slip-ups. Every now and then, an intern or a nervous welder would pause to watch Amelia Legendary for upgrading rusted freighters into deep space, salvage vessels during her civilian days. But this was different. If the Council's threat was real, these destroyers would face enemy craft with trillion-kilowatt beams and shield harmonics, far beyond anything terrestrial. 3. Pilots, soldiers, and simulations in London's revamped RAF. Hangar 9, London-born pilot Marcus O'Connell tightened his flight gloves as he stared into the VR simulator. Around him, cadets from the Royal Air Force, U.S. Air Force, and the Indian Air Force collectively trained on the same holographic network, linked across continents. Incoming interception run, intoned the simulation. Dozens of triangular council. Fighters materialized against Earth's pale blue. Marcus's heart hammered. He yanked the throttle forward, sending the virtual Hawking interceptor rocketing through simulated clouds. Bandit at your 6 o'clock. A voice crackled through his helmet. He barrel rolled, dodging a searing plasma bolt. A cockpit glowed red as he locked onto his target. The kill notification blinked across his HUD. Target neutralized. He exhaled, removing his helmet. Around him, trainees cheered, but the elation was hollow. None had ever fought a real enemy in space. None knew if their simulators could truly model the Council's exotic weaponry. In Cape Town's newly christened Starlight Barracks, infantry soldiers of the 1st Antarctic Cybermech Battalion downloaded combat uplinks in VR. Their exosuits, bristling with dynamic armor panels and powered by microfusion cores, felt like second skin. Corporal Aisha Thabiti, her eyes the color of storm clouds, stood before a wall-sized hala of a Council biosphere cruiser. "Remember," her drill. Sergeant warned, voice echoing off metal walls. "You're not facing poorly armed mercenaries. You will breach alien corridors, fight in zero-G against bio-augmented infantry. Keep your heads, and you might live to tell the tale." 4. Politics, protest, and the price of war on Earth's surface. The gears of war exacted a heavy toll. Nations diverted entire budgets once, destined for schools, hospitals, and renewable energy, into the war program. In Berlin, student protests erupted outside the Ministry of Defense. "No blood for cosmic oil," chanted Manners. In Brasilia, indigenous leaders decried plans to clear rainforest for a new spaceport. In Moscow, a leaked hacker collective published blueprints for the Aegis Protocol shield matrix, demanding public scrutiny. President Desai faced the storm in daily briefings. "We are at war," she reminded the world in one address, "and war demands sacrifice. But we will protect our planet and each other." The UN passed emergency resolutions reallocating civilian industries to war production and international. NGOs were repurposed to support refugee camps in anticipation of orbital debris fallout. Yet beneath the surface unity lurked fractures. Cyber saboteurs, possibly Council sympathizers or profiteers, launched DDoS attacks on shipyard networks in Vladivostok and Mumbai. Intelligence agencies worked around the clock to trace the breaches. Admiral Nakamura authorized counteroffensives digital and kinetic to ensure that the fleet's steel heart would not be paralyzed by invisible hands. 5. The eve of departure, as Earth's final hours ticked down, the IFC reached combat readiness. In orbit, the ISS battle station Artemis hummed with charged anticipation. The Prometheus destroyers slid from their dry docks into deep water, thrusters flaring as they made the long voyage to Guam's naval shipyard for final outfitting. Pilots boarded their modified Stallion X shuttles in California. South Korea and New Zealand, greeted by tearful families and solemn blessings. In a dimly lit hangar in Stockholm, Amelia Reyes clasped the hands of her aging mentor, Dr. Victor Lindholm. "One last time. Come back in one piece," he whispered, voice cracking. "I intend to," she replied, turning toward her ship. But as the hatch closed, doubt still flickered in her mind. Could humanity, united though it was, truly stand against the might of the Galactic Council? Moments later, across every time zone, Earth's spaceports lit up like fireworks thrust vectors dancing against the backdrop of blue skies and starry nights. The convoys launched. Railgun platforms, support freighters, troop carriers, an armada of pleading steel and human spirit, deep in the jungles of Papua New Guinea. In a hidden listening post, encrypted signals confirmed the deployment. The Council's sensors tracked every launch, every pulse of ion thrust. Somewhere in the vastness beyond, envoys whispered gaunt predictions. Earth was unprepared, its weapons primitive, its belligerence suicidal. And yet, for the first time, since the ultimatum had fallen, humanity finally had its answer. It would fight. The arms it forged in 72 hours glinted with desperation, determination, and hope, an arsenal untested, but wielded by hands that would not falter. In 48 hours, they would face the Council in the void. But tonight, against the backdrop of blazing rockets and pounding hearts, Earth's defenders stood ready to show the galaxy what they were made of. 70 hours had become 48. The die was cast. The war machine stood poised, awaiting the signal to unleash its fury against an enemy from the stars. The vast emptiness of space had never felt so charged with menace. Through the reinforced viewports of the IFC flagship Artemis, Spindly stars shimmered against, ink-black void, but all eyes were fixed on the three. Triangular behemoths arrayed in formation 20,000 kilometers distant. Their cobalt edges pulsed in ominous unison, as if counting down to destruction. 1. Countdown to conflict, 60 minutes to deadline, intoned Lieutenant Commander Aya Hassan, her voice calm but urgent as she monitored the digital clock projected. Beside the targeting holodisplay, all Earth's orbital platforms, railguns warmed to white heat, and plasma capacitors charged in parallel. Below decks, pipeline crews in Cerberus exosuits ran coolant lines and sealed access hatches. The final word had come from President Desai. Hold fire until we're certain the Council opens hostilities. Then unleash everything. Admiral Leo Nakamura stood on the bridge's upper gallery, gaze locked on the alien vessels. His uniform once, a crisp white, was streaked with grease and sweat. Around him, officers from 15 nations waited, hands hovering near their consoles. A single misstep could trigger the apocalypse. Hypervelocity coils at full charge, reported Captain Helena Alvarez, the Artemis's chief weapons officer. Railguns are green across all batteries. Warp lasers, calibrations complete. Antimatter. Torpedoes in final lock. Good, Nakamura murmured. But remember, our railguns punch slugs at 65% of C. They'll hit, but their shields will absorb most kinetic energy as thermal. We need to hit the pressure nodes between shield harmonics, or risk bouncing off uselessly. He turned to Commodore Rao Patel, head of planetary intel. Any change on their shield's refresh rate? Patel's eyes didn't leave his readout. Minimal drift. By extrapolating the shield harmonics from the drone skimmer's telemetry, we expect a 4.2-second recharge cycle. If we time our salvos into that window, we might just crack them, Nakamura finished. He tapped his cum badge. All batteries. Plan A is hammer and anvil. Railgun burst at T-5 seconds, direct at junction points. Follow immediately with plasma pulse to widen breach. Then torpedo Omega-3 into the fissure. Below there. Deck plate, Marines in sealed compartments readied themselves for boarding operations. Their exoskeletons patterned in global camouflage were fitted with grav boots and grav grenades. They eyed the bulkhead doors through visors lit by green HUD readouts. This was humanity's best bet. Create mayhem in the aliens' guts, too. Force them to divert firepower, then slip through the breach. 2. The moment of truth at T-10 seconds. The Artemis's engines flared briefly, an optical calibration trick to mask the real firing signal. Then, as the digital clock flicked to 0, every railgun on Earth's orbital platforms thundered in unison. Tungsten slugs blazed forth, trailing blue-white contrails that shimmered across the distances of space. On the Artemis's bridge, the recoil buzzed through the decks like a fleet of thunderclaps. Rail Salvo 1 complete, Alvarez announced. Impact in 21 seconds. The entire fleet held its breath. 1,000 kilometers ahead, the triangular vessel's energy shields glowed brighter, rippling with each incoming slug. Time slowed. Then, in a single heartbeat, the lead ship's left flank erupted in a series of violet flashes, slugs punching through at critical junctions. The hull behind the shields buckled inward. Direct hits, cheered an officer in French. Shields at 63% on the port side. Locking plasma pulse, Alvarez continued. Charging to critical. Moments later, streaks of superheated ionized gas shot from the Artemis's banks, distorting the light around the Council vessel. The shimmering plasma carved arcs across. The hull widening the breaches made by the railguns. A hiss of madness filled the bridge speakers as the rupture crackled with otherworldly energy. Fire torpedo, Omega-3. Nakamura commanded. A sphere of antimatter slipped from its tube, guided by quantum sensors into the freshly carved aperture. The explosion gave no warning. A white-gold flare blossomed inside the alien ship, visible as a distant star bursted. Bloom. Then came the shockwave, a silent pulse of radiation that rippled outwards, tearing at the Artemis's shields. The flagship juddered violently. Brace for counterfire. Nakamura yelled .3. Council's reply true to threat. The alien response was instantaneous and merciless. From the apex of the central triangle, a cobalt beam thicker than any terrestrial railgun slug pierced the Artemis's forward shields. The impact cratered through 2 decks, sending smoke and debris into microgravity. The lights flickered. Consoles shorted in a cascade of sparks. Damage to sections 4 through 6, reported Lieutenant Kira van den Berg, her voice strained. Life supports offline in this corridor. Hull breach imminent. Admiral Nakamura didn't flinch. Divert all remaining shield power to the front arc. Deploy barrier drones from Bay 3. On a side panel, he keyed a code. Dozens of insectoid drones nicknamed Watchdogs zoomed into the corridor, deploying reflective plasma filaments to seal hull breaches. Below, the boarding teams felt the shockwave. Grav boots inflated with extra charge to anchor them. As the battle raged overhead, Sergeant Malik Janssen activated his helmet microphone. Teams Alpha and Bravo, you're clear to proceed. Primary target, Engineering Junction beneath Port Railgun. His voice crackled as alarms blared. 4. 0G close quarters inside the alien vessel. The corridors were a labyrinth of shifting geometry. Walls that curved into each other, light panels that seemed to breathe. Maroons and purples glowed from conduits carrying unknown energies. Janssen's squad expelled themselves into the breach decompression stromboli, hanging in the air like glittering confetti. Mag sprays hot? Janssen asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Xiaobon Murphy. She fired a stabilizer round into a conduit overhead, and sparks flew. 30% containment, she reported. Moving to cut panel 4B. They worked in silence, slicing through alien alloys with plasma torches, adapted from salvage ship tech. Every moment, they heard the distant thunder of battle. Railguns rebooting, beams slashing across void, cries of pain through cum channels. Suddenly, a column of bioarmor. Infantry poured into the corridor. 8-legged, sinuous beings with chitinous plating and 4 guarded forelimbs. Their weaponry a swirling vortex of energy swept toward the Marines. Engage at will, Janssen hissed. Bullets and plasma bolts ricocheted off curved walls. A Marine went down, caught mid-stride as an energy pulse melted through his chest plate. Murphy returned fire, her grenade sending bioarmor shell fragments spinning in 0G. Grenade out, she shouted, launching a grav grenade. It exploded in reverse, sucking the Council warriors inward toward its nanoplasma core. 3 fell, their armor ruptured by shrapnel and grav force. Clear, Janssen panted. Engineering Junction next door. 5. The tide turns back on the Artemis. Casualty reports flickered across the tactical display. 2 destroyers had taken heavy damage. 1 was adrift, its crew evacuated. Yet the Council's lead ship, impaired by the breach, had lost primary forward thrusters. Its formation shifted precariously. Admiral Nakamura's eyes burned. All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessel's aft reactor. It's now exposed. Seconds later, every surviving cordite cannon and pulse laser locked on. The aft reactor exploded in a silent nova of violet fire, illuminating the void like a dying star. The Council vessel tumbled, convulsing in a cascade of collapsing crystal pillars and ruptured plating. On the bridge, the crew erupted in shears relief, triumph, and exhaustion, swirling into a fervent ache. Nakamura allowed himself a brief nod. That was necessary, he said. But don't break formation. They still have 2 ships with full shields. 6. Messages from homing control centers around the world. Civilians watched the live feeds in awe and terror. Families in Tokyo sat glued to the giant screens in Shibuya Crossing. In Buenos Aires, crowds lined Plaza de Mayo, eyes lifted to the skies. In Nairobi, street vendors paused mid-transaction to listen to crackling radio's broadcast anchor. Maria Silva's voice trembled. We have confirmation that the Artemis flagship has scored a direct hit on the Council's lead vessel, but at great cost. Behind her, the column of wounded soldiers from Cape Town's Starlight Barracks moved slowly through the hospital doors, their exosuits charred and dented. Amelia Reyes stood beside her Prometheus destroyer's viewing port. Through the reinforced glass, she watched the distant reactor explosion. She allowed herself a small, weary smile. We gave them hell tonight, she whispered to her AI co-pilot, Iris. But this war has only begun. 7. Aftermath and resolve. By the time the first shockwave of debris cleared, humanity had tasted victory and newfound fear. The Council's remaining 2 vessels had retreated to regroup, their shields still unbroken, their resolve unshaken. Sensors confirmed that captives, both human and Council, were drifting in the void, awaiting rescue or ransom. On the Artemis, Admiral Nakamura convened his battered command staff. Smoke curled from exposed conduits. Med teams worked to stabilize the wounded. He surveyed the war map. Earth's fleet was down 20% in firepower, but the Council had lost its flagship. I expected annihilation, Nakamura admitted, quietly. Instead, we've proven we can bleed them. He clasped his hands behind his back. Our mission now is clear. Repair, reinforce, and press the advantage. The Council will strike back harder. We must be ready. Below decks, Jansen's squad repaired their grav grenades and tended to their fallen. Murphy packed away her plasma torch, gaze distant. They're not invincible, she said softly. No one is. And so, as the battered Earth Armada limped toward makeshift docks in lunar orbit, every sailor, engineer, and marine carried the same realization. The first salvo of war had been fired, and though the cost had been immense, the spark of human defiance had ignited something far greater than any weapon. It had ignited hope. 70 hours had become 48. 48 would become 24. The galaxy watched, and Earth-scarred, but unbowed, prepared for the Council's next move. The Council's remaining triangular behemoths drifted. At the edge of lunar orbit, their wounded flagship adrift in a tumbling spiral toward the far side of the moon. Beneath their cobalt glow, the battered but unbowed remnants of Earth's armada limped into the hastily constructed docks of Luna Pi. 3. A ring station forged from decommissioned cargo modules and asteroid-mined steel. There, engineers labored to repair ruptured hulls, replenish shattered munitions racks, and recalibrate the coil guns, whose barrels still glowed with residual heat. 1. Forging the Earth Defense Confederation on Earth, less than 40 hours after. The first salvo, the United Nations General Assembly, convened a landmark session in Geneva's subterranean bunker. Delegates from every member state once, fractured by ideology, geography, and ancient grievances, sat shoulder to shoulder. The motion on the table was extraordinary: to dissolve existing military alliances in favor of a single, planet-wide consortium known as the Earth Defense Confederation, EDC. President Amina Desai rose to address the assembly, her suit tailored from a composite fiber designed to withstand both nuclear fallout and zero-G shrapnel, gleamed under the chamber's lights. "We stand at a crossroads," she announced, voice echoing off the reinforced walls. "The galaxy has judged us, and we have met its verdict with courage. Yet our victory was Pyrrhic, our losses grievous. If we are to survive, we must bind ourselves not just as allies, but as one people under a single banner, the banner of Earth." A hush fell over the delegates. Before her, maps of asteroid trajectories and council fleet vectors pulsed on hollow panels. Beside her, virtual readouts displayed the immense power the EDC could wield: integrated railgun fire control, pooled antimatter reserves, and a unified command that spanned continental coasts and orbital platforms alike, backed by unanimous consent save. For a handful of abstentions from resource-rich nations concerned about ceding sovereignty, the EDC was born. Its charter guaranteed equal representation for every inhabited continent, binding treaties on resource sharing, and a single democratically elected high commander whose decisions would guide Earth's defense and diplomacy as one. Within minutes, the EDC's seal, a circle of 12 interlocking glyphs symbolizing Unity-illuminated screens in every capital. 2. The Aegis Protocol with the EDC established, attention turned to Earth's most critical vulnerability: the Council's superior long-range weaponry. If another bombardment came, especially above the cityscapes of Tokyo, Lagos, or New York, the casualties could be catastrophic. From this urgency sprang the Aegis Protocol, a planetary defense matrix designed to envelop the globe in a temporary but impenetrable energy shell. In the abandoned reactors of Chernobyl's exclusion zone chosen for their redundant safety systems engineers, welded conduits for the Aegis field generators. Thousands of kilometers of superconducting cables snaked across deserts, under oceans, and through mountain passes, linking every nuclear facility to central hub stations. At Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, and Kurchatov Institute, physicists oversaw the calibration of the matrix's harmonics, tuning the reactor outputs to generate a global resonance frequency that could deflect or absorb the Council's exotic plasma. Beams. Dr. Elena Marquez headed the protocol's advisory council, her insights born from that first encounter in New Mexico. Holograms of energy curves danced around her as she addressed the gathered specialists. "We have but one shot," she warned. "When activated, the Aegis field will draw upon every terawatt of power our planet can muster. It will last no more. In 10 minutes before the reactor's cores stabilize or fail. But within those 10 minutes, we can turn the Council's onslaught back upon themselves." As she spoke, technicians in remote control rooms monitored reactor temperatures, magnetic flux densities, and plasma containment. Every reading had to be perfect. A miscalculation could trigger a meltdown or collapse the field prematurely, leaving Earth defenseless. 3. Rallying the world while engineers raced against time, the people of Earth girded themselves for the decisive moment. In Buenos Aires, dance halls went silent as tango music gave way to rousing speeches by the EDC's first high commander, General Lian Wu of the People's Liberation Army. In Nairobi, Maasai elders drummed blessings for the warriors, who would carry the fight to the stars. In Reykjavik, fishermen's boats flew the EDC banner alongside national flags. Children crafted origami cranes inscribed with a 12-glyph seal, sending them skyward in azure festivals held in capitals from Delhi to Toronto. Social media swelled with hashtags like #OneEarth, and #StandWithEDC, uniting billions in a shared cause. Even within the Council's own spheres of influence, planets that had once revered them subversive, transmissions intercepted by Earth's satellites revealed alien dissidents questioning their leaders' intentions toward humanity. It was a war of metal and mind. Propaganda broadcasts from the EDC mixed heroic footage of boarding raids with appeals to universal rights. Philosophers and poets joined scientists on global panels, debating the moral stakes. Was survival the only justification? Could Earth emerge not just triumphant, but transformed? 4. The final hours. As the countdown to the Council's deadline reached its final hours, the EDC's command centers went to DEFCON 1. On Luna Pi 3, the Artemis floated alongside two newly Arrived Prometheus destroyers, their repair crews swarming like ants across mangled hulls. In Houston's MC Kai, EDC, flight plans for the final volley were beamed to every fighter squadron and torpedo frigate, President Desai and High Commander, who stood together on a balcony overlooking the Geneva bunker's landing pad with the councils. Envoys still housed under strict guard stared blankly as Royal EDC honor guards marched past. The air thrummed with tension. Desai placed a hand on Wu's shoulder. "They'll come at us with everything they have," she said softly. Wu's eyes, hardened by years of terrestrial conflict, softened for a moment. "Then we remind them why humans never back down." Behind them, the holographic clock ticked down the final 60 minutes. World leaders tuned in from secure links. Families watched from their living rooms. Even the Council's own ships hovered. Silent watchers on the cusp of History. 5. The battle for Earth. At 0 o'clock UTC on July 21, 2025, the Aegis Protocol was activated. In a breathtaking spectacle, ribbons of cerulean light arced from reactor hubs, converging into a shimmering sphere that bloomed across the planet's surface. Cities vanished beneath its glow. Satellites in low orbit shimmered at the threshold of the field. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then, without warning, the Council's vessels unleashed their full fury. Plasma beams lanced toward Earth, striking the Aegis field with cataclysmic force. The defensive shells shuddered, ripples of light dancing across its surface. Each impact sparked an aurora of flaring energy-vast auroral storms painting the skies in shades of violet and emerald. On Luna Pi 3, Earth's fleet launched its counterstroke. Railgun volleys raked through the void, while antimatter torpedoes surged toward the alien ship's weakened flanks. In the melee, fighters streaked past, leaving trails of nanoplasma in their wake. The Artemis directed every remaining weapon. At the Council's flagship, still drifting from the earlier salvo. Inside the Council vessels, Tarvico's S-command deck trembled as the roof panels buckled under focused fire. His eyes widened, an expression rare for his kind, as he barked orders in a clicking tongue. Moments later, the lead triangular ship spasmed, its energy signature collapsing in a final silent implosion. The remaining two hesitated, shields flickering, but Tur's resolve hardened. He signaled the retreat vector. The last two vessels disengaged, their cobalt edges dimming as they accelerated away into the void, leaving behind a trail of wounded craft and a stunned lunar landscape. 6. Aftermath and a new dawn. The Aegis field finally collapsed. 10 minutes to the second Earth's battered armada had triumphed. In orbit, ships drifted in silent vigil, tattered banners flapping in 0G on Earth. Billions cheered. Church bells rang. Air raid sirens transformed into horns of victory. President Desai's voice crackled through every com channel. People of Earth, we have done the impossible. We have stood firm against a power that claimed we were insignificant, and we have prevailed. But this victory is not the end. It is the beginning of our place among the stars. Together, as one, we will build a future worthy of our courage. Tarvico's triangular vessels vanished beyond sensor range, leaving behind a data stream of retreat coordinates, proof that the Council lived to fight another day. In the Council's own worlds, diplomats scrambled to explain the humiliation. War councils convened to reassess humanity's threat.